So today we're going to talk about AI in social media. So again, there's a couple of areas that AI is impacting social media. I've always known it for changing of the algorithms and how our content is seen. So that's always been a bit of a pain. But obviously, in the last year or two, there's a few more influences of AI to AI content that's been created and how that's being pushed up and how the platforms are dealing with the AI content. So again, I'm seeing terms and conditions on these platforms being changed nearly monthly or bi-monthly. For example, YouTube it felt like it was very anti-AI content, and they've updated their T's and C's, and feels like 20-25% of the content there is now AI content, the faceless YouTube channels. And then we've got the topic of AI influencers and other things. So when we talk about AI in social media, what's the biggest thing that you see today?
There's so much to it, isn't there? I think there's so many layers, and AI has it's been a game changer for content creators, for small businesses right up to massive corporations, where obviously they're able to use generative AI to create content, like engaging content, genuinely like good content, and obviously a tiny fraction of the time. So things like productivity, obviously that's been a massive help. And I think in terms of the actual changes that we've seen in the platforms themselves, like AI has really enhanced those, in terms of how it personalizes user content, how it's analyzing data, from a business perspective, improving ad targeting, and providing like social listening tools that are even better. What is really interesting currently is the rise in AI generated influencers. This is something that I have only recently really started to become aware of. And it's fascinating.
Oh, yeah, that sounds insane.
It does, like the idea that we're at the point now. I mean, even influencers as an idea in social media are still a relatively new thing. The fact that they're now becoming bodiless is kind of scary. I think one of the interesting thing is that whenever obviously Meta was working with AI in the past couple of years, they originally set up some AI generated profiles. In the past couple of days, I think we've seen that they've deleted several of their original AI accounts.
Yep.
Basically, what's happened is users have started to point out what they term sloppy imagery. And they've actually started engaging directly with the AI profiles and saying things like, have Meta lied to users about whether or not you're real? And the AI itself is actually saying, well, yes, they lie by omission in that, they haven't told people. So it's really interesting. And that's when it introduces the idea of like the ethics behind it. Is it ethical to have AI content and AI profiles out there that people don't actually realize isn't real? Like, I don't know, what are your instant thoughts?
I mean, first thing comes to mind, obviously, I'm thinking of, your usual influencers that you get, going around promoting your everyday coffee shops or your restaurants and things like that. So that's immediately what I think about when I think of influencers. So whenever you're saying, that AI can do this, and obviously it's limited, obviously it'll be generated content and whatnot, but I mean, from companies I've spoke with before and things like that, I mean, these influencers definitely can be very expensive. So I can see why people would maybe be driven towards the sort of, towards AI and trying to make it more, cost effective, because it definitely can be expensive. For obviously you're hiring, real people, things like that. So you've obviously got a lot more cost to be, to be considered. But I mean, definitely one thing I would, obviously these AIs are gonna, these profiles, if you like, these influencers are gonna have opinions. So I mean, they're going to be all set up differently, I guess. So I mean, I definitely think it's quite interesting. It definitely is interesting. But I like the way you're bringing up there just the ethics. What way does that work in terms of, they're obviously going to have maybe some strong opinions about certain things. Is it going to be towards brands? Is it going to be towards kind of personal opinions? So it would be interesting just to see where that's going to progress. It's obviously a very, very new thing, as you say. Even influencers are quite a new thing over the last sort of, say, 5 years, 4 years. So to see that we're moving towards AI, it will be very interesting to see where that sort of leads.
Definitely. And I think like what you mentioned, Dylan, about cost effectiveness. That is a big part in it. Is obviously influencers that are saying the more followers I have, the better engagement, the more I can charge. One influencer marketing agency in Spain actually just got so fed up with the rising costs, and obviously, like you said, there you can always have issues working with humans, but maybe not so much when you're working directly with AI.
Yeah.
So they built their own AI influencer called Itana, who's now bringing in around 10,000 euros per month for them in terms of brand deals, which is absolutely incredible. They don't have the same headaches they had before. They're obviously their costs are down, so their profits are up. So it's crazy what's actually happening.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that agencies and market agencies are able to, to avail of using an AI influencer to, obviously to utilize for, for companies and things to use to, promote businesses and promote products and things like that. Like, I mean, it's obviously staggering considering we're only a couple of years into AI. So I definitely think that it's going to be an interesting route to go down, and it will be interesting to see where it progresses. Obviously, like anything, it'll probably change quite dramatically as we go. Facebook and things already removed those profiles that you mentioned, things like that. So it'll be interesting to see. Kieran, I know you mentioned there about terms and conditions. Do you see any issues with that sort of leading into that AI influencer sort of market?
Yeah, and listen to this, I'm thinking as a business, busy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Of course, and back to how you promote the business, and as you mentioned, a big drive around what people are charging, and we're all looking at costs at the moment. It's very interesting looking at the employability side of things as well. We know more and more people are going into their dream job is to be a content creator or an influencer. That is a very attractive niche to be working in at the moment, where we know it's very competitive at the micro or nano level, but very, very interesting. You've got businesses who are looking at trying to cut down costs as well. So maybe there is going to be a space for AI influencers and real life influencers, and that those two will work together.
Yeah.
Really interesting to see some retailers now, as we mentioned on a previous podcast, who are going in now and using AIs as models for their
Yep.
fashion to really be quick to market, but also reduce massive cost, even sustainability. The travel to lovely destinations to do photo shoots, how much money they can save, and not business. And then, of course, hopefully that's been passed on to consumers in the till. So all very important. But yeah, back to the conditions and how we present this as a business. Do we need to be very clear and transparent that this is an AI influencer, or back to the Meta example where they're maybe not hiding it but not being very transparent? Then there is and often will be a bit of backlash. But I think this is going to continue for another couple of years. We're going to have this blending, but it's back to you really need to have really clear AI, maybe transparency in your terms or on your website or around your brand, that your audiences don't feel, or your customers don't feel, that you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, if you even look at over the past few years, I think it's obviously legislative now that celebrities and influencers have to actually highlight in their posts if something is an ad. So could we, is it the case where that same logic needs to be applied, where we're at the point now where we're saying this is an ad and this person isn't real? It's up to you whether or not, because if you even look at it from like a consumer rights perspective, they are consuming an advert and they're thinking, okay, well, this person says that it's real, but that person isn't real and can't have experiences. It's not sentient. So it's really, really interesting, like the ethics, I think, definitely around transparency. And I'd be interested too to know, have there been any like studies or any statistics around people's opinion on AI content versus something like an AI influencer? Because there's a big difference there. AI content is hopefully still truthful and honest and real, but if it's an AI profile, it's kind of different, isn't it? It's almost this idea of being cheated or lied to potentially.
Yeah, I agreed. Yeah, I think with AI, obviously you think of content and AI content as a whole, and obviously we've got these these big companies like obviously OpenAI, things like that are have got probably the best chat models, but the way the AI is trained, obviously the way AI works, it's fully trained up, it gets trained, and the more you use it, the more people use it, the more it learns. But at the same time, there is a lot of algorithm that is coded into that through, the developers of the company and things like that. So there is a level of where that AI can obviously be, I'm not saying manipulated, but at the same time, it might not be 100% accurate and maybe even truthful at stages. Sometimes it can be very opinionated. So I guess with the AI influencers, we're probably going to see something similar, maybe a little bit more personal, I guess. But I do definitely think, that definitely could be an issue. One thing you had mentioned, Kieran, which I thought was quite interesting there, was the models for, so say a clothing company. Obviously there's a lot of companies that's using that at the minute. It saves costs again. You don't have to, employ people to do it. But just thinking there, when you were talking about AI influencers, are we going to go one step better now and be able to use a model to model the clothes, but also create a social media for that model? So it looks like from the outside in that the company is not just using a random person. It's actually a person that is working with them. And technically in the next 5 years is every single company, or well, not every single company, but a lot of companies going to have their own influencers as such, their own in-house influencers, because they're going to be able to build them up through AI. So you kind of have that model, you have that personal sort of, this is somebody who works for us, this is somebody's model in our clothing, but you also have them where you're going to be able to put that sort of personal connection to their, social media posts and the way they come across. So I do think that there's a lot, just when you mentioned it there, was the first thing I thought of, and it was like, that's probably something somebody's going to use.
So true.
Yeah, no, just pens out. I think we need the ProfileTree
Yes,
influencer.
definitely need
I think what's really interesting is when you think about the entire theory behind the idea of influencer marketing, is that the reason that it works is these are people that users and consumers look up to, in a sense, or maybe see themselves as, this is what I would like to be. This is how my life would like to be, or I would like my life to be. Obviously, if it's an AI profile, then if you truthfully know that that's not real, then you shouldn't really establish that same connection. So I think even that fact in itself shows that people don't realize that these are AI influencers. One of the very first Google search result that comes up for AI influencer is a profile called Lil Michaela. So she, I will use the term she loosely, has 2.5 million followers, is not real. That's what I meant by that. But if you actually look at the comments that users are leaving, they don't know. It's, unless everyone is being totally ironic, they do not realize that this isn't a real person. Like, the content itself is centered around news stories and current affairs, things like the US election, Coachella. She even has a brother. So I think it's almost like building this entire network of people, and they are getting big money. They're actually probably going to get to the point where influencers are worried about losing their jobs.
Yeah. I was going to say, because there's influencers and quite big influencers, obviously, out in America, and we've obviously got some here, even in Belfast, and I mean, they haven't got 2.5 million followers, and they are probably working very hard to to gather that following up. So to see something come in like obviously AI, which maybe comes across as a bit unfair to some of these influencers, it may it may be a bit staggering, but yeah, no, I think it's crazy, and the fact that it has she has a brother, it's just going to lead from one thing to another. And again, as Kieran, you say, sometimes it's what's it going to be like in another couple of years? It's
Yeah, but is this just, again, is this because we're rolling in with AI? Because again, just thinking about it, what's the difference between an AI influencer and, say, a character that's not made up? If you think of Money Supermarket or any of these, like again, checking, there's been loads of movie and TV characters that have actually done ads. So is that the same idea or close to it, that they're just made up characters? Maybe the problem is that they're so lifelike, but then you've got people.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like if you're watching a TV advertisement with, the meerkat from comparethemarket.com, you know that that's a character, or even if it's a physical human being, you know that human being is playing a character. Whereas people, I think the businesses know at this point that they are fooling people. The Spanish agency that I mentioned that created their AI called Aitana, what they do is the image itself isn't AI generated. What they're actually doing is the physical presence of the AI person is generated, and then they'll set it into an actual real life background. So things like sitting at a table with like a bowl of cereal, that's all real. So just to try and improve the actual image quality and make it seem even more lifelike. So I think in most cases that businesses do know what they're doing, and they're potentially playing on people's um lack of realization, because so many
Yeah.
people maybe still don't
Yeah.
recognize an AI image because you're not looking for it if you don't have an awareness of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I've spoke with, plenty of companies and things like that, and sometimes they don't realize that AI images are AI generated. I think three of us, we would be able to identify them quite quickly because there is quite a niche to them, but there is a lot of people that don't. I think with what you said there, Kieran, obviously, the characters, the difference between characters and influencers. I think characters are very obviously, not real as such. It's very much made up. Where these influencers, as you said, Laura, with the comments on that Instagram profile you're talking about, people maybe don't even realize that this is not a real person, and they're communicating like it is a real person. So it is interesting. One thing I would bring up, obviously, AI is one of the key talking points about AI is obviously jobs, and is it replacing jobs? Influencing is obviously quite a new thing. I know there is a university down in Dublin that is now doing a degree in influencing. So they are pushing towards that job, and it's obviously become such a big thing that they are doing degrees in it now. So are we looking at that becoming obsolete in the next 5 years? If this is, becoming such a big thing? I know obviously AI, that's one of the things with it is, it's going to replace my job, but are we, looking at just another area that it is actually overtaken?
I don't know. I suppose it's like, could it replace a celebrity? Probably not, because you
Yeah.
still want that, like, up to date views, that kind of front of the magazine kind of stories and stuff, don't
True.
you?
Yeah, that is true.
You want the scandal. That's what the problem is. Another pro for the AI influencers. You control the message. You're not going to wake up and see them on the front of the paper for something negative. So you're going to avoid all that scandal. So there is a little, if it's done right, you could de-risk that, because again, you think of all the celeb scandals or influencer scandals that have broken up rules, and how people had to pull back sponsorship deals and cancel things.
Right.
Even coming out 10, 20, 30 years later, for people that they've been associated. So there is a de-risking of that as well. Not that I'm pro, but I can see it all blending together, and it'll work. Sometimes you might use a AI influencer, sometimes you might use a real influencer, but it's definitely, there's going to be a little bit of friction over the next year or two while this all gets worked out. But very interesting times, as I say, but business. I'm thinking of cost. We can scale it, control the message. It's safe to a point as long as you do it right. But yeah, there is a lot of issues around it as well.
That's true. It's a good point about de-risk, but I mean, there are a lot of instances of issues with inaccurate AI content. What we've seen, I think, even in the past week, was Apple's AI, which is basically responsible for summarizing BBC News headlines, has had a few minor hiccups, shall we say. I saw one story where it had reported that Luke Littler had won the final of the PDC Darts Championship before the event took place. So there, it's about, okay, do you as a business have control over the content that either you're creating or paying someone else to create via AI? So it's really like one of the things that I suppose we tell clients every single day is editing, moderation. You can't ever fully trust AI to be exactly what you need it to be, because at the end of the day, if it's crawling the internet, it's relying on the data that's available. Is that data impartial, unbiased? Is it keeping with your brand messaging, your tone of voice, like your target audience? These are all really key things to consider, no matter how, why, or when you're using AI.
Yeah. Definitely, and I have actually got that upgraded AI on my phone, and so far it's on the side of disappointed. I think that what you said there about obviously them pronouncing Luke Littler as a champion before, I think because it summarizes your notifications on your homepage. I've had a few hiccups where it's kind of summarized things and thinking it's all together when it's only individual things. So it's kind of put it all in one. So I do think that there is still a bit of development to go there, but at the same time, I'm with you on that. There definitely is that sort of level of, is this content accurate? Is it true? Is it exactly what I'm looking for? You can never take it 100% at face value. You have to, always just have a wee look, especially with, you said with clients, I've spoken with clients as well. Never just copy and paste AI content and say, oh, this is 100% accurate because it came from AI. It definitely is something that you're better tweaking. And even with the AI influencers, I think the best way to use AI is use maybe 80% AI, 75% AI, and then put your own sort of human aspect into it. And I think that's been the best combination with even content creation or any sort of AI functionality that there has been.
Yeah, I like to think of it as, AI has to have a line manager, the same as everyone else in a company.
Yes.
Like no one should just be totally free to do anything that they want, because at the end of the day that can lead to mixed messages. And like absolutely cannot take away from AI tools in any way, because even one of the articles that we posted on the ProfileTree website recently, like we've seen a 23% increase in revenue for companies that are actively leveraging AI-driven content. Like that's a massive boost. And when you think about, again, the enhanced productivity, their efficiency, it's really just very much about learning how to harness these tools. And obviously that's a big thing that we're trying to do here, is educate, inform, make people realize that it's better to understand something than to be afraid of it or fight against it. We'll always need human input no matter what. No, it's not going to come and take all jobs, and we're not always sit with our feet up.
No, I agree. I don't think it's, especially, not where it's at the minute. I mean, we can't speak for obviously 20 years down the line. But I don't think that where we're at now, it definitely needs to be controlled. Even some of the tools we've used, I mean, there is a lot of advancement coming there, even over the last couple of years with ChatGPT. But there still is, I mean, I use it every day and I still get results that I'm like, what's it talking about? That sort of thing. And sometimes it's like, oh God, you do need your own input into it. Definitely. If you just ask it for one thing and it gives you it, it's probably not going to be right. So I 100% agree. And it's, as I always say, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes within,
Yes.
sort of.
I think even when you think about it, it's so interesting because AI itself is a buzzword, and AI has existed for years. AI has been living in our homes in the form of a little white dot in our kitchen that we ask, how many grams of sugar should I put into a pavlova? It's so interesting that people are maybe more afraid of AI. I suppose when we say generative AI is probably what is what's been happening over the past couple of years. They're much more afraid of that than they were of things like Alexa, like Google, like tools that we have been using every day as part of our life. That maybe haven't seemed quite as lifelike as what we're seeing now, with tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Bard. So it is really interesting, the shift in mindset, I think. And again, to go back to, transparency, people wouldn't have had to, tell customers, oh, we're using Alexa internally, but now is it, what are your guys' views on being honest and transparent about use of AI?
Well, you need to. I think it's at the point now. I'm assuming that everyone's using it. I know a lot aren't, but nearly everything I see now, I assume there's an element of AI in its creation, or it's how it's presented to me. It's very interesting to hear of all the mistakes that you're seeing in the daily use of AI, and I think that might continue over the next little while because it is so new still. And I remember back when we get some really bad Google results or search results, and you don't know why is this. It seems very spammy, but again, people will try and manipulate results, but also you can see how there'll be errors or mistakes as they roll this technology out. So super excited to see what it brings out next. But again, so with social media, and we're talking about the AI. So content creation is good. We can personalize and use chatbots and analyze the data a lot better than we could before. Influencer marketing with AI is a wee bit tricky. Then that's a debate to continue. But as you say, you're rolling nicely into like there's a definitely we've seen a lot more emails coming in, a lot of fraud, issues around people impersonating people. Definitely an uplift in the emails pretending to be another company, and that's where the negativity of it is. So, the ethics and how AI is controlled is definitely a big thing. And I think there's a lot of we know that say the Twitter AI tools you can use and create an image of anything you want. There's very little guardrails or copyright restrictions in there, which is a good and bad thing, of course, because good if we're all good people, but sadly there is bad actors out there and they will use these tools for their own mischief or benefit, which is definitely not a good thing. So it's going to make it harder probably for people to understand that everything they're watching might not be real, especially when the platforms are going to take, I think, a long time to figure out how they protect people if they want to. It's really interesting to see how things are changing in the social media landscape. It feels like even Meta now are taking the guardrails. They're removing human moderation and checks on content. They're going to let the community report things and comments. So again, is that the best way? Is it a cost saving feature? Is it to align to more laws? So it's going to get really messy and murky while we wait for laws and governments and platforms to catch up. But for businesses, I think we need to be very transparent. Back to what we were saying earlier, we need to be very transparent that we're using AI, how we're using it, and if it is something that might get easily confused, maybe we should have little warnings or in descriptors just to make sure that people understand that it is AI, because we do know in the last year, probably some of the most engaged content on, say, Meta, Facebook, has been AI images where there may be animals being saved from fires and and people are typing on how brave people are, but it's all AI, and obviously marketeers have been manipulating that loophole and that'll probably continue this year too.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about Twitter and the potential for copyright infringement, Kieran. I think with the recent launch of Meta AI, they're going to introduce a new feature soon, which will allow users to choose their own voice for the voice assistant. And they're going to have celebrities like John Cena, Kristen Bell, who are obviously, a part of it. But what we're seeing as well is, a rise in generative voice AI, which is, quite clearly actually ripping off the voices of celebrities. I think Scarlett Johansson comes to mind. She's recently involved in a court case saying this is clearly my voice. It's so unmistakable, but they're able to say it's AI. We don't work with you, and then it's like, okay, if they're basically going to rip off her voice, is she entitled to payment for that, or like what's that going to look like? Are we going to see a massive rise in court cases where judges, lawyers don't really know where they stand because maybe the legislation isn't clear enough? What are the changes going to be legally, I guess, for AI?
Yeah. Yeah, and I just touched on that as well. When I'm using social media and specifically Twitter, I think around the American election, people was utilizing, being able to basically make people speak. So they were using it for the two candidates to actually make them say something. And yes, to me, it was obvious that it was AI. But at the same time, back to the influencer, people might not know that that's not real. And they could be taking that's 100% what the person has said. And again, it could be quite influential, especially with something so serious and high up as that. So yeah, no, definitely, it's something to think about.
Yeah, there's such potential to cause, even offense with things. The other day, I saw what I considered quite a funny image, but it was visualizing Vladimir Putin and Greta Thunberg as a couple. There's nobody problems with that shit that they can't even begin to start with. But because they're trying to maybe utilize AI to create that shock factor. Because as we all know, social media algorithms really do feed off the most engaging content, which sadly in a lot of cases is maybe much more on the negative side. So it's important to, again, like inform and educate people around what to look for. Just as the way we tell people every day, if you see an email that looks suspicious, do not open it because it could be spam. In that same sense, we don't want anyone to just take things that they see online at face value, because it's so often the case it can be completely fake.
Brilliant, isn't it? One of the main reason why we seem to be delayed in the EU and UK in getting the latest AI, so Meta AI, for example, delayed. So for years, it felt like launching here is because of the European Union AI Act that came into force on the 1st of August in 2024. And it puts a real responsibility on the companies to be very transparent on how it wants to know how they're using the data, especially the AI, and how it's going to impact in all sectors, but it has highlighted some key sectors. And the fines for that are quite aggressive. It's 7% of a company's annual global turnover. So that's why, so it reminds me back to the GDPR, but again, the EU Act they're leading the way. We do have the US AI Copyright Disclosure Act, but it's nothing compared to the EU AI Act. And the UK have a pro-innovation approach. So again, probably will mirror in time the EU Act when it's finalised, but the EU is leading the way. But it does feel that the companies are kicking back and maybe the world. So there's a bit of a race to get the AIs. We see China, America, like who's going to lead the AI race? And to do that, they probably need restrictions removed so AI can make mistakes in real life and the models develop. But in the EU, then they're definitely taking a more risk-averse approach, which for consumers is probably a good thing. But for the arms race, it feels like around the AI, it's maybe not a good thing for the company. So we'll have to see how that pans out.
Absolutely. And I suppose there's so many layers to it. And because AI as an entire topic is so brand new, we again want businesses to try and educate themselves on things like the EU AI Act. There is a blog on the ProfileTree website which helps you kind of understand the act and kind of summarizes the legal obligations behind it. Like, would massively encourage people to have a read through of that, because at the minute people probably don't even know that there is an act, let alone know what that actually outlines and what it means for you as a business and your sort of corporate responsibility to customers.
And it does apply to, I was quite surprised, same with yourself, I was quite surprised to see that it does apply to every business where you're developing AI or using AI in your business. So there is a bit of a responsibility there. While the UK is still a wee bit more flexible in their approach, the EU AI Act is definitely something for larger companies, but also it'll filter down that everyone needs to be aware of, especially if you're in that space and heavily using AI in what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have we put the words to right then? So on AI and social media then today?
We certainly, I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface.
No.
There's so much going on. There's so many things to consider. Like, it can at times feel like a bit of a mind phase, but I mean, to have the point, like it's just about trying to educate yourself as much as possible. There is so much information out there. It really is. It's important to have a look at that. We've at this point we've been working with AI for I suppose the guts of a year and a half probably within the business, trying to learn as much as we can as a business how to be again responsible and sensible with the use of it, and then taking that and trying to show our clients exactly what it can do and what the benefits are. It can seem easy to get bogged down in the potential negatives of AI that you can almost think that outweighs, but definitely as a whole, it's been an absolute game changer for us, for the industry. And there's so many amazing things that it can do. It's just learning, okay, well, what do you need from it as a business? It could be anything from process automation to, basic content creation to, like Boy said it, and it truly is incredible. And I think that's only going to grow and grow and grow. But yeah, again, we definitely need to see a better sort of stream of information for people to better understand it.
And excellent. Dylan, I'll leave you with closing remarks.
Yes, no, I just with it again. I mean, thinking of it even from within a company basis, obviously it's changed to the way we do things. But I mean, I'm thinking of it and even personal. ChatGPT specifically, I've become very reliant on it. Probably too reliant at times. Even things as far as meal planning, things like that. It is quite intriguing what it can do. So, what I would say is, anybody using it, definitely it's definitely good in moderation. Obviously don't rely on it too much, but it is good in moderation, and it's the efficiency and how how useful you can be with your time and things like that. So I do think that, as we always say, and I have said it a few times even today, is in the next 5 to 10 years, where are we going to be? Is it going to be, something in our brain? I mean, Elon Musk obviously has the chips and things like that. Are we going to be towards that with AI? Is that how advanced we're going to go? It is intriguing. It's sometimes overwhelming just because of how much new stuff comes out. I mean, we always have conversations about all the new technologies and all the new apps that come out. And I mean, we could have those conversations every day, I think, just because of how much that actually does come out. But it will be intriguing to see, especially even in the medical field. I think that's where the biggest, sort of drive for it will be, trying to cure illnesses that couldn't be cured previously, things like that. I do think that it's, next 5 to 10 years is going to be really, really interesting. And me, for one, I'm quite excited for it and looking forward to it.
Nice. So I said thumbs up.
Yep.
Or thumbs up, yeah.
Thumbs up. Thumbs up.
Cool. Well, we wrap at that, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.